Puniša Račić was a Serb leader and People's Radical Party politician who assassinated Croatian Peasant Party representatives Pavle Radić and Đuro. Basariček, and mortally wounded HSS leader Stjepan Radić in a shooting which took place on the floor of the Parliament of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes on the 20th of June 1928. He was tried and handed a 60-year sentence, which was immediately reduced to 20 years. He served most of his sentence under house arrest and was killed by the Yugoslav Partisans in October 1944, shortly after Belgrade was liberated from the Axis powers. Early life and political career. Puniša Račić was born on 12 July 1886 in the village of Slatina, near Andrićevica, Principality of Montenegro. He entered the employ of politician Nikola Pasic as a 16-year-old in 1902. Pasic regarded Račić as a son and encouraged his political ambitions. Račić became active in Serbian nationalist circles and claimed to have organized assassination attempts against King Ferdinand I of Bulgaria, King Constantine I of Greece and Emperor Wilhelm II of Germany. Following World War I, he earned a reputation for suppressing pro-Bulgarian movements in Macedonia. He was one of many Chetnik leaders who formed Serbian cultural societies in the region. On 27 September 1927, he was elected to the Parliament of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes as a representative of the People's Radical Party. Račić is reported to have had connections with the ruling Karađorđević dynasty. He was the leader of the Association of Serbian Chetniks, Peter Marković, Viking and Fatherland until 1928. The movement was established, following a split in the Chetniks in 1924 and built up a vast network across Bosnia and Herzegovina in the ensuing years. It maintained a close relationship with the Serbian National Youth Parliament shooting. On 19 June 1928, Račić and 23 of his colleagues requested that Croatian Peasant Party leader Stjepan Radić be examined by doctors to determine if he was mentally ill and, if it was discovered that he was not, that he be punished to the maximum extent for describing several Serbian ministers as plunderers, bandits, and outlaws, and thus violating the parliament's rules of procedure. At that day's session of Parliament, Račić and fellow Serbian radical Toma Popović shouted, "Heads are going to roll here, and until someone kills Stjepan Radić there can be no peace." The atmosphere that day prompted Radić to remark that a psychological mood for murder was being created. Several individuals in Serbia had made death threats against Radić in the preceding days. The Croatian People's Party, which stood opposed to Radić's anti-clericalism and pan-Slavic ideas, also called for his removal from public life. Serbian newspapers such as Politika, Samoprava and Jedinstvo demonized Croat politicians, including Radić, and called for the murder. Out of caution, Radić was quieter than usual at the following evening's session of Parliament. A verbal confrontation erupted that night when HSS Deputy Ivan Perna shouted insults at several Serbian politicians, questioning the wartime record and suggesting they were responsible for committing atrocities. Croatian politician Ljubomir Mastović then made a speech protesting how the death threats against Radić made by Popović and Račić the previous day had gone unpunished by the President of the Assembly, Ninko Perić. Popović responded by saying, "If Stjepan Radić, who shames the Croatian people, further continues with his insults, I guarantee that his head will fall." The opposition benches reacted by shouting insults and death threats at the NRS party deputies, who responded in similar fashion. Perić ordered a 5-minute recess and retreated to his private chamber, where he spoke with Račić. Račić RACIC was given the floor when the session was resumed. In his speech, he asserted that Serbian interests had never been in greater danger and stated that he would not refrain from using other weapons, as need be, to defend the interests of Serbdom. Opposing politicians, especially Perna, responded by taunting RACIC and shouting as he spoke. RACIC demanded that Peric penalize those jeering at his speech. Perna then shouted, "Thou plundered bays," accusing RACIC of looting Muslim homes in Macedonia. Seeing that Peric was not going to reprimand Perna, RACIC reached into his pocket and produced a handgun. The Minister of Justice, Milorad Vujičić, who was sitting behind the podium, grabbed RACIC by the back while the former Minister of Religion, Obradović, seized his right shoulder. RACIC pushed both men away and shot Perna first. He then turned his attention to Ivan Granda and shot him. He attempted to shoot Svetoza Pribicevic just as HSS Deputy Thuro Basariček jumped to the podium. RACIC aimed at Pribicevic but shot Basariček instead. He then shot Radić in the hand and stomach. Radic's nephew, Pavle, rushed to help his uncle. Upon seeing him, RACIC yelled, "I was waiting for you," and shot him at point-blank range. He then fled the chamber. Basariček and Radic's nephew died immediately. Perna and Granda were wounded but survived. Radić was seriously wounded and was taken to hospital immediately, where he was visited by King Alexander I. Aftermath demonstrations erupted in Zagreb at the news of the shooting. 5 people were killed and many more were wounded in clashes with police in the 10 days following the attack. Deputies from the HSS Democratic Party coalition withdrew from the parliament in protest. The shooting was the most significant political murder of Croat politicians during the interwar period. It destroyed popular support for the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes in Croatia. On the 4th of August, the editor of years.He, one of the newspapers which had called for the murder of Radić and Pribicevic, was assassinated by Josip Sunic, a member of the youth wing of the Croatian Party of Rights. Radić was operated on shortly after he was shot and his surgeon predicted that he would recover. Within 2 months of the shooting, his condition deteriorated unexpectedly and he died on the 8th of August 1928. Vlatko Maček, Radic's successor as head of the HSS, suggested that diabetes had led to an infection which caused his heart to fail and suggested this as his cause of death. A week before his death, Radić had alleged that RACIC was only the executor of a plot conceived of and agreed to in one part of the Radical Club, and stated that his shooting had likely occurred with the knowledge and approval of Peric and Prime Minister Velimir Vučićević. RACIC was celebrated as a hero through much of Serbia. He turned himself into the authorities shortly after the shooting and was tried and sentenced to 60 years in prison. This was immediately reduced to 20 years. His shooting of HSS deputies led to King Alexander suspending the Vidovdan constitution on the 6th of January 1929, renaming the country to Yugoslavia and proclaiming a royal dictatorship. Later life and death. RACIC spent most of his sentence under house arrest in a comfortable villa, where he was attended by 3 servants and was free to enter and leave at will. The leniency of his sentence likely came as a result of his connection with the Chetniks. He was released from house arrest on the 27th of March 1941. The Ustases used RACIC's shooting of Croatian deputies as one of their excuses for persecuting and massacring Serbs during World War II. Racic's son, Captain Dragoslav Racic, led the Chetniks of Cer Mountain during the war. Puniša Račić was killed by the Yugoslav Partisans on 16 October 1944 following the liberation of Belgrade from the Axis powers.